Our focus is one of our strongest abilities to interface and connect with the universe at large and the way that creation happens. And so checking in with our focus, where it's actually hanging out, right? So if the focus is on the scarcity, if I need, I must, it's very difficult for other things to come into your experience. And the opposite is true as well. If you are consistently focused on how much you appreciate things, more things you appreciate are closer and more available to you.
You're listening to A New Way of Living with Dan Voss, inspiring you to a new life of breathwork, cold therapy, and plant medicine. My guest this week is Julian Guderley. Julian is a podcast producer, high-performance coach, and event creator. Over the past 15 years, he has hosted transformational gatherings and special events on 3 continents with thousands of attendees. Julian is also the creator of Green Planet, Blue Planet podcast, broadcasting over 300 episodes on regeneration, positive planetary actions, and systemic change. Julian's high-performance coaching, which I worked with Julian as my transformational coach last year, is tailored for successful entrepreneurs to develop the insights, skills, and frequency that deepens their personal freedom and purpose. While I consider Julian a mentor of mine, I'm also really grateful for the friendship that we have formed over the last year or so. And I'm so excited for you to tune in to the insights, ideas, and wisdom that he shares in this conversation. Julian, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Yeah, Dan, it's a pleasure. I'm stoked to be on your podcast.
Absolutely. I feel like this conversation was a long time coming. We met, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I think?
Yeah, that's it. We met like a year ago. You worked with me for a little while. I supported you and as a coach for a bit, and I'm just thrilled to see you thrive, man, and to see you put out your, everything you got from breath work to podcasting to creative photography you do. I mean, man, you're living it.
Thank you, Julian. I appreciate that. And if I were to sum up our time together, working, you being my coach, I being your coachee, you do an excellent job of being a cheerleader. You find ways to cheer me on and, find ways to highlight my strengths. But at the same time, you do a really great job of highlighting some room for improvement, right? Areas that I can improve on. And even before this call, we had, a little catch up on where we're at. It's been a little while since we've spoken and seen each other. But immediately you were in my corner cheering me on and reminding me of the great things that I do have going on. So I just want to acknowledge that great balance that you have. I think that's what makes a really great coach, is that ability to be a cheerleader, but then also coach the person and not be afraid to be a little harsh, right? A little tough love. And that's what you're so good at, is give me that tough love.
That tough love as well. Well, thanks for the accolades. I mean, I was like, where's he going with this? I'm a cheerleader. I don't know if I get behind that. No, but I hear you. So, just to kind of make this into, like an interesting conversation about coaching in general and the space right away. I think number one, unless you're a super skeptic, then I'm not even trying to convince you right now. But if you're listening to this and, coaching is possibly new to you, or you're in the field, like when it comes down to it, I believe coaching is in its purest form. I'm not saying there aren't some bad apples out there, but like in its purest form, coaching is an expression of caring. It really is, because it is the same as in, sports performance or, like high performance in the business field is the same for everyone who's out there to create their own life. We deserve people that care for us, that support us, and including for specific timeframes or for specific transactional windows where within that time, a coach comes in to constructively help you dissect certain things, but also to cheer you on other sides. Because like we talked about many times, Dan, like some people, not everyone, but actually a lot of people, they miss out on the times to celebrate their own accomplishments. It's something about the way we get programmed in the society where everything is about the comparison of who's the best sport player, who's the best celebrity, who's the best at whatever. And really, even though there's a part of that culture that can be fun and entertaining for a moment, at large, that's not how we would want to measure ourselves with each other, right? We want to We want to authentically be who we are. And so that process is quite a journey. And many people forget to celebrate the little steps, the little wins. One of my other clients recently, he accomplished like an endurance run. It had nothing to do with business. It was just a personal accomplishment. And I asked him, like, how did you celebrate that? And he's like, oh, I took my fiance for dinner and invited her. And I'm like, interesting. Well, did you celebrate her, or did you celebrate yourself for accomplishing your thing? And so we had this whole conversation about it, because like, even when we celebrate sometimes, or when we cheer ourselves on, sometimes we do this only in the context of, let me disguise it as celebrating someone else. So nothing wrong with inviting the fiance for dinner. I think that's beautiful. But inviting yourself for something, cheering yourself on for the little steps, rather than waiting till the big accomplishment or the I finally made it kind of exclamation, I think is a very, very important step of a healthy career, of a healthy expression of our gifts, and of coming into a relationship of self-love, not in a conceptual way, not in a talking about it way, but in a lived way. And it can mean taking yourself out for dinner. It can mean buying yourself a toy that you wanted for a long time, like an instrument, or it can mean, spending a weekend alone in a tent and just enjoying and celebrating that, like, this is your life and you're allowed to live it and do it the way you desire.
I want to riff on that idea of love a little bit. You mentioned the topic of self-love and the importance of celebrating ourselves along the way instead of waiting until we get to that end goal. So what are some ways we can invite more love into our lives, whether that be self-love or love for others?
It's a deep question. Well, I mean, context is everything there, and it definitely varies in relationships. But I guess, love is the everything in that sense. Like, the deeper I go into my own inner space, the answer is it sounds like a placative statement, like a thing people like to say on podcasts, but it's really true. I mean, love is the fabric that connects everything. And so to create that space for oneself is really about creating time with the self, creating time that is also alone time, right? That is time that allows us and ourselves, and I totally include myself into that bucket, like to step out of being stimulated from social media, to the cell phone, to the TV, to social time, meeting friends. It's like, self-love can simply mean to become very comfortable with being you alone, being you with no one else around. And I believe that's a part of self-love that's often underestimated. Often now it is like, self-love means take a big bubble bath. And it's like, that's great. I'm not against that at all. I like baths, actually. I go swim in the cold ocean, and sometimes I like to have a hot bath afterwards. So it's a bit easier to digest. But really, the amount of time we're able to spend alone with our own thoughts, alone with our own desires, alone with our own frustrations, that is what really opens the door to self-love. So I think the best tools are not always free, but sometimes are free. And so this is a free one. Is, when was the last time without a cell phone where you spent as little as 4 hours, or as much as a whole day, by yourself? Not waiting for a message, not checking if there's a message, not checking any news, or not doing something productive, but simply being, right? That's one of the easiest ways, I think, to get to self-love. And I do believe, Dan, that connects how we create that love factor for others as well. Because when we do these things, and I regularly make sure that I actually spend some of those times alone, then suddenly I have so much more energy for my beloved partner, for my friends, for my clients, for the people I care about. And I have many times in my life hit that point where I realized, I'm empty. I can't give more, because guess what? I didn't create that time to just let my own cup be filled by nothingness. Not by doing something, but by nothingness, of realizing, oh, look, there's this delicious space where being myself, alone with myself, is just enough.
Do you ever find times in your life where you realize you're not maybe giving yourself that time and that love? You're not filling up your cup. And what are some things you do to refill that cup?
Yeah. No, I definitely know how that feels. I think most of us learn these things not only by listening to others talk about it, or following the self-help advice of a book, but we really learn about these things by making life experience. And so getting out of balance is part of getting back into balance, because it's when you know what you don't like, you get clear on what you actually want, right? Yeah, man, for me, it always has to do with turning off the cell phone, actually. I find it troublesome how much we have come to expect that everyone's always available at all times. I find it, exhausting if I need to reply to every email within, 5 minutes or even 24 hours. Now, don't get me wrong, there's lots of times when I love doing that because I'm just so excited about what's going on in my email. But then there's other times where I'm just like, no, like I just want silence. So silence is the biggest gift for me. And it's doesn't always come by itself, because we live in such a distracted time. Breathing, breath work, Kriya yoga, those are my tools to get into that space. Sometimes they come easy, sometimes they're work, just like the word breath work suggests. And other things, have to do with being with genuine friends for me. Again, when I'm actually present with a friend, I'm not also on the cell phone at the same time. Mm-hmm. When I'm really present with a friend, I'm not even taking a photo of our time together to then post it later. Right. And so for me, that's like the short answer, I guess. It's just alone time, silent time, sometimes using those tools and bridges like cold baths or, the sauna or breath work or yoga to get me into that space. And then definitely also social time just with people I really deeply care for.
I love that. Yeah, that's something for me myself. I find there are days and weeks where I'm just on my phone way too much and simply shutting it off entirely, leaving it behind, going for a walk, go by the lake. And it can be an hour, like you said, it can be 4 hours, it can be a day, whatever it is that feels right for you, but giving yourself some of that space that we normally wouldn't unless you consciously think about it. So that's a big one for me. I want to continue on this idea.
Can I throw one more in before we move on?
Yeah.
So I just listened to a podcast, another podcast, Rich Roll's podcast with Colin O'Brady and his wife Jenna, and he's just publishing a book. I think it's coming out this week as we're having this conversation, Dan. And he's introducing this idea of a 12-hour walk, and it's the exact same idea actually. It's like, can you go on a 12-hour walk without your phone? You don't even have to have a destination, just to be 12 hours alone with yourself. Wow. And so, anyone who's listening to our recording today will probably hear about that 12-hour walk book and the 12-hour walk experience quite a bit more, because they're planning to roll it out pretty big. But that's the idea, and I think a lot of people are catching on that we have come to a place of overstimulation with everything in the external world. And so it is a cliche at this point as well that the answers are all inside, but it's also a truth. The answers are all inside. And so only those who spend that time will actually really get that.
It's such a great idea. The 12-hour walk, man. It sounds challenging when you say that out loud, but then there's a part of me that it feels at peace when I think about being alone for 12 hours.
And it's also like, it sounds challenging. I agree. And at the same time, it's like, it's the simplest thing, because you could just walk out your front door and just, after 6 hours, you turn around and then you're just back, and it's just a day. It's not like you need to prep for it, plan for it. You don't need to be in specific shape. You could just, if you don't feel like walking anymore, you just sit on a rock and then you walk it in an hour again. But you got to do it for 12 hours. That's like getting up at 7 a.m. and leaving at 8 and being back at 8. Like that's,
I'm kind of laughing and smiling right now because I'm thinking about our ancestors watching this conversation in the future, thinking, what are they talking about, being alone for 12 hours? We do this all the time. And on that note, how can we, and I really want to take my next question into your work around regeneration. Your podcast, Green Planet, Blue Planet, is heavily focused on regeneration. And so my next question here is, how can we reconcile with nature and with indigenous ways of living while we still have an advancement of technology?
Wow. Love the question, deep question. Upfront, I don't believe I will have the answer that's going to satisfy everyone listening, but I'm going to give my best to share it as authentically as it's coming through today. And, from there, it's an open dialogue. From my own work with Indigenous people on 3 continents, and well, really on more than 3 continents, because I've been visiting Indigenous people all over the world, but especially in South America and North America. That's the point I'm trying to make. The main message is that, of course, there are wise elders that still hold the keys to certain pieces of knowledge, but at large, with our modern society and with the dark past of colonialization and the perpetuation of that, most of the indigenous wisdom is not being embodied anymore, even by people that have indigenous bloodlines. And so that means it's a really big topic for us actually at this point on our planet, because those of us who are understanding that we are intrinsically a part of nature, we've never been externalized from nature, like the Cartesian philosophy and science that we base a lot of this material world on, and also even Darwinian principles they put us into a steady competition with nature, but in reality we are a part of that. There's a whole paradigm shift around that we might want to open ourselves to. And the indigenous people of Brazil that I've had the privilege and the pleasure to sit with in ceremonies and in medicine ceremonies, and even just recently, their message is recognize your own indigeneity. Recognize that you are indigenous to the planet, even if you're born in Germany, even if you're born in the United States, or insert any other country. Those are just our 2 countries, right? Recognize that you are an integral part of nature. And you mentioned regeneration. Regeneration to me is a principle of life. It's present in all of biology. We could talk hours about how it is present in all of biology. Hint at the mushroom kingdom. There's a lot that we don't know about the mycelium and the mushroom kingdom at large yet. And regeneration as a principle is very visible in the way the mushroom kingdom operates. But all of biology operates this way. And so do we, so do our bodies. And so recognizing that we're a part of it, recognizing that this is deeply in us, I think is always going to be step 1, because we were sold a lie that all progress comes through technology. And we were sold a lie that the technology is always something outside of us. I don't agree. Ancient yogic philosophy talks about our body being the original technology. So we as spirits, we as consciousness live in a body for a time frame of a lifetime, if that's 60 years or 80 years or 100 years or however long. And for this time, in Kundalini yoga, one of the things I've learned was to call it the body glove. We're putting on the body like a glove over our over our true identity, the infinite self. And so now if you're following me until now, what I'm saying with that is we are a technology ourselves. Our body is a technology. And if we're able to make that long journey from the head to the heart, now we're accessing the true power of this technology. We know through, peer-reviewed science. HeartMath Institute has done a lot of really beautiful science on the intuitive intelligence of the heart, how that works, why the heart is the true governing organ of our body, how that is electromagnetically reflected through the field, and so forth. And so when we make the journey from the head and the heart every day, over and over again, we suddenly have an access to this technology of our own body in a much more augmented experience. We don't necessarily need all of the biometric tools that we're currently inventing and selling to each other based on plastic that ultimately is polluting the planet. We can use them. I'm not against all of them, but we don't necessarily need them because we have all of these vital signs and all of these connections to the natural world already because we're part of the natural world. So that's kind of where I hang out with that. But however, I'm not opposed to technological progress. I just really think over the long run, and our ancestors will look back at this time and be like, wow, you guys were walking paradoxes. Like you kind of got the message. You were already leaning towards it, but every purchase you made was basically a paradox to the values you hold. Because even buying a modern cell phone, and also the lie that we need to replace them every 2 years, otherwise we're missing the progress. I mean, it's all lived on the back of other people and bioregions that we're exploiting for that, either with cheap labor, with physical abuse, or with just straight up exploitation of the earth. And so our systems on the planet are super lopsided, and no one else but the people can claim it back. Like, I don't believe there's going to be a leader or a world government or any government that's going to get us to, another place with that. So it's really about the people and the choices that people make. Technology is not going to be our savior. I don't believe that. Technology is part of who we are. But again, we are the OG technology, and that intelligent organic principle is really, it's out there for us to discover and play with. And so I'm going to wrap it there for now. But if you followed me down this rabbit hole, it's not an easy thing to even understand. But it's not about the conceptual understanding. It's about the way we embody that, and humbly so, because we all don't really know. But polluting more of our planet with more technology that, it seems to be the savior of everything, I'm very certain it's not the pathway to health or homeostasis.
For someone that's listening right now, that, let's say, a light bulb just went off in their head when you said that we are the OG technology, and they're like, that got me to think in a little bit different way than I haven't thought of before. What would you say are some ways that we can embody that as a principle without letting modern technology and the advancement of that modern technology take over, but really bring it back to the roots of humans being that OG technology?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's so simple. And, Dan, and you teach that as well. And it has to do with breath, and it has to do with experience and embodiment over conceptual understanding. So yeah, it is neat to have a biometric system hooked up to you that can prove some kind of data where you're like, oh, look, it's all happening. The data thing, the bars are rising and falling on my display. But really, if you breathe in a specific Kriya Yoga breathwork pattern, or in a specific holotropic breathwork pattern for as little as 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you simply connect to the sensations, to the awareness of your own body, of your cardiovascular system, of your heart rhythm, that is an experience. That way you're tapping into that technology. Now, right after that breathing, there's stillness, there's silence, there's insights, there's intuition, right? There's a feeling of well-being. And so all of these are ways to connect to that OG technology that is our body, that is our the beautiful human body. And it doesn't actually need any conceptual understanding at all. You can just do it.
That's such a good reminder for someone like myself, who is now in a role of teaching about our breath and facilitating breath sessions. It's very easy to get caught up in what we're doing, like what the science is, the breath movement, the counting, the whole practice of it, and facilitating it and leading it. And it's what you just said there, allowing the breath to be that technology that we've had forever, really. It's such a good reminder for me to bring it back to that, the basic principle of we are in control of our health and our well-being, and we don't necessarily need what we're being sold on a regular basis in today's modern society. So I just want to acknowledge that, to say thank you, to remind me of something that's very easy to forget when you step into a different role like that.
Yeah, man, I hear you, and that's why I said words don't really teach, and the life experience that we all have is where we get our own learnings from. And so many of us are going through those rhythms and those layers right now, or have in the last 10, 20 years, because there's only so much that we can solve with the mind. But then coming back into the present moment will always connect us back to the breath. And I'm going to make a little stretch here, and also to the water we drink and the water we're immersing into, right? And so I'll leave the water topic on the side for now, but coming back to breath, there are so many ways to get into it. And I'm pretty sure you're going to link out one of my recent creations, which I did with my business partner and friend Lance. We filmed it in Mexico. It's a breathwork course, and really, it's a distillation of my last decade of being taught and being initiated in different breath practices. And for me, there's a lot of Kriya Yoga background, Kundalini Yoga, different Hatha Yoga experiences, and also a little bit of holotropic breathing. But the point about breath work that I want to make on this podcast with you, Dan, is that, well, yeah, it can be work because you need to change the pattern of how you breathe and bring awareness to it. And sometimes you need to put a bit of effort into it. But not everyone needs to start there. So we've designed this course with, over 30 videos and more than 400 minutes of material in a way that allows people to move, that's why it's called the breath portal, through the practice of breathing into a portal of presence, a portal of stillness. And that has always to do in the first step with simply becoming aware of where your breath is in this given moment.
It's so crucial. You mentioned earlier this connection between our mind and our heart. For me with breath, that's one of the main takeaways that I get. You talked about you get insights and visions and this general feeling of well-being. And those are all things I've experienced in the past and are all wonderful and keep me coming back and exploring more. But if you bring it down to its basic, what's happening there at a basic level is I go from being in my mind, right? That monkey mind that people often call it, of thoughts and anxiety and worrying about what I need to do or something I didn't do yesterday, whatever that may be. And bringing it back to my breath, it allows me to get back into my body and come back into my heart center. And that to me is one of the greatest gifts that we have as humans, and a greatest gift that I can give to other people is to give them this ability. They already have that ability. It's really just making them aware of that ability, that they can go from being in their head and bringing it back into their body, back into their heart.
And you see, this is where like full loop to where we started this conversation already here is like, that's what I meant earlier when I said coaching is an expression of caring, or in other words, like, the industry of coaching in the way we're experiencing it in the last 10 or 5 years through the internet also has a lot to do with an economy of care that is being born. We live in a time of industrial capitalism where many people, not everyone, but many people do not care what they're selling as long as they're making a profit with it. And they do not care of the consequences to the planet, the environment, the ecosystems. And we've already collectively, to a large degree, understood that we can't really keep going like that. And so, this is my belief that certain principles of economics need to gradually shift. There's also other things we need to just stop doing. And, maybe we need to come to terms that we can't really wait for our governments to do things for us. But the power of the people is so much stronger than most people understand. But what I wanted to say with this economy of care and the way you just expressed the value that breathwork and the work with clients has for you in your life, and it's very similar for me. It's this expression of caring in a way that is simply guiding someone from their mind back to their body. Because I care for more people to be present in their body right now, today. Right? So if you're inspired by this podcast, keep listening. But if you're realizing like, oh my God, right now I just got to get out of my head and, do some breath work or lay in the sun or, get some vitamin D into my body, then pause the podcast, come back later and just like get off your phone for a minute, And what I mean with that is just embodying the step that is right for you as the one next right step is so much more important than understanding all the concepts or having it trackable on an app or whatever it is, right? Like the ability to come back to the present moment and understanding, how does my body feel right now? What are the signals my body is giving to me? Where's my energy? Is my energy here, or is my energy 3 days ago when I didn't dare to ask that girl for her number? Or, and so all of these different layers are layers that we can bring back, collapse, and through the breath, anchor in the present moment.
I used to, for a number of years, wear an Apple Watch, and I know there's so many different, wearables, and I feel like that market is continuing to grow, the wearable technology market. You have your Fitbit, Apple Watch. I mean, there's a number of different different tools, and I'm not necessarily against them. I think they do serve a purpose for certain goals and for certain people.
Yeah.
But after a while, I was thinking, like, why am I wearing this watch every day that's showing me my, my heart rate and my steps and this and that? And again, some of that can be really great, but I realized it was taking away my ability to listen to myself, to listen to my own body.
Hmm.
And a lot of that was simultaneous
Damn,
around
that's
like learning
huge.
about my breath. In terms of timing is when I was starting to get more into breath
Hmm.
work and meditation. And that's when I realized, like, wow, I have way more power than I'm being sold here. Like, I can bring it back, like we're talking about, bring it back to my body through my breath. I can look at my sleep. Like, I don't necessarily need a sleep tracker. I can simply tune in and say, did I get enough sleep last night? Did I get good quality sleep last night? And if not, what was the
Hmm.
reason? How can I make some adjustments to get better sleep tonight? Or diet, like, did I feel good after this meal? No. Okay, well then maybe switch it up a little bit.
You're saying something so important, and that is the way we pay attention, the way we listen to
Mm,
those signals. That's the main kicker here. That's the main point we're making. And if that paying attention happens through an app or through a form of biometrics, that's in
right.
itself not a bad thing. Like, some of those tools can be super helpful, especially for a transition period of you simply becoming
Mm,
aware of something. However, if that's the only way how you're sure, then you're missing out on your internal connection to all of these signals, your feeling, your intuition, your ability to observe. Right? This is like the rule number one of science. No, it's like you create a hypothesis and then you observe. And so, like, how are you gonna be the chief scientist of your own
mm,
life if you're not even really observing? But if all the observing needs to be done by another tool that you just blindly trust, and talk about the Apple Watch or any Fitbit or wearable, like, that also introduces certain frequencies and wavelengths into your body system that maybe, if we look at it from a bird's eye perspective of 100 years, maybe we don't want all this Bluetooth in our body
mm.
24/7. I don't really know, but just something
Yeah,
to think about.
absolutely. I would love to hear a little bit more about a few things. Number one, your, I guess you could call it origin story, how you got into all of this. But I also want to hear where you're going from here. So I guess to start with, was there
Mm.
a pivotal moment in your life where you realized that transformational coaching was a path for you, that regeneration was a topic that you were passionate about, um, breath work was a big part of your life? Like, was there a moment in your life that kind of that it all clicked for you?
Yeah, man. I mean, there were several clicks along the way. I think the biggest click that I remember now when you ask me about it, had to do when I absolutely uncommitted from the old paradigm of how I made money, of how I lived, and absolutely committed to a new direction. So, origin story, I'll sum up, a few of the highlights real quick, and walk us back into these click moments. So, I did grow up in Germany, but since I'm 15, I'm basically a global nomad. I was really privileged and really lucky to spend a whole exchange year, 12 months, in a host family in Paraguay, in South America at the age of 15 and 16. Changed my worldview. I mean, I could talk about that for hours on the podcast. It really changed everything about the way I saw the modern industrial world and the values and how we live those values and how we judge the global South, and all of that. And long story short, when I came back home to Germany as a 16-year-old to finish high school, I had a massive cultural shock. Massive. I cried so much, and it was just like
Going
such a
back to
tough time.
Germany, you had a
And
cultural shock.
I
Wow.
coming back home to Germany, because I felt like, wow, like very few people are able to really understand what I just went through, and everyone's just in their lane of like, got to finish school. That's what's coming next. You got to get a job. Oh my God, like you didn't do well in this last math and physics test. I'm not sure, Julian, if it was a wise decision for you to skip a grade because of the exchange year. Like things like that, where I'm like, dear math and physics teacher, like, I think you're missing the point of life. Like, am I a human being? I just made a massive experience, and um, there's more important things out there than how I finish on your test. And those are just like small examples. But just the performance culture and the like accuracy culture that makes Germany, to a degree, also comes with a lot of, like kind of negative vibes in a certain way. Like, I'll make the famous example of, like, if a train is late 2 minutes in Europe, people start complaining, man, to the point where they'll be on the check-in counter and they're like, "Can I get my money back? The train's late." I mean, there's clear rules around how that works, but I remember coming back from that exchange year and was just like totally, my worldview just had changed. And so the reason why I share this is because this is 20 years ago, but since then I've been in over 60 countries. I have lived on several continents. I have, at first, really serendipitously, and it's at some point also intentionally, searched out to spend time with indigenous people, with teachers, with, yoga entered my life in 2009, breathwork entered it at the same time. And, talking today, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I moved to Canada, where I live on the Pacific Northwest of North America, in unceded Indigenous territory, Wet'suwet'en or Songhees First Nation countries. And all of these things, all of these steps along the route have been massive awakenings for me to realize this modern industrial capitalist world that we live in, it isn't the only way to live this world. Now, I'm not against it, right? But I do think we know, for many reasons, and our health and the planet's health is like reason number one, it needs to change. And so those values I saw lived in a family in Paraguay, and the way that they celebrated family and being together, it just really opened my heart. I think that's the short note here. It just opened my heart permanently. And so, I was jumping around through the timeline here a little bit, because when yoga and breathwork entered my life right around 2009, and then starting 2011, it took on its whole own dynamic. I'll talk about that one click moment in a second here. I wasn't really in it to teach that for very many years. I just wanted to practice, and I always had the opinion, which is just my very righteous opinion, that many people start teaching way too early into their journey with yoga or breathwork. And if that's what your calling is, go for it. But for me, it took many years to feel like I wanted to actually guide and teach others, to the point where I had people knocking on my door being like, "Hey, can you teach me these things that I know you've learned?" And that's when I started offering it in client work, so the breath work and the meditation teachings, and you can find me on Insight Timer and the breathportal.com, and all of these things. That kind of happened. I wasn't looking for that. It didn't click until someone was really on my door knocking, being like, "Yo, I pay you money for you to teach me this." And I'm like, "Well, that's nice. Like, why not?" But something happened earlier that was very much me just like taking the reins of my life. So, I as I said, when I got back from Paraguay, I first had a pretty big cultural shock. I kept traveling abroad right after school and during university, and but at large, I entered what I call the German dream for a short moment, a few years, where I went to a state-paid university, which had ups and downs, and I ended up working for two very large companies for a couple of years. And that's the German dream. You go to state-paid university, you work for a multinational company that pays you a great salary, is super prestigious on the outside, and I love my parents, and they know I make this joke. My parents at the time probably had the easiest, the easiest time ever when people asked, "So what is your son Julian doing?" And then they answered, "He's working for BMW cars." And, conversation over, everyone like checked the box. Great. That's a good step for him, right? Like that kind of, yeah. And then you're laughing because like many of us know that kind of interaction with our parents. And so the click moment was when I left my gig with BMW events. So I was exclusively working in the events field with first Nike and then BMW. And, I'm really grateful for that time because I learned a lot, and I had super cool experiences, from being on racetracks to have, give to people the experience of driving a Beamer on a racetrack, to, being in like ski and snowboard resorts, to the same thing, to gift people the experience to drive a luxurious car. It was kind of cool in a certain way. But there was this moment, there's two moments. One was when one of my bosses at the time encouraged us all to wash a car because, one of the higher ups was scheduled to arrive, and to wash the car with bottled water. And there was something in me, like my entire being was like, fuck you. Like, I'm not going to pour bottled water on a car. Like that's just against everything I believe in. Like, what are you talking about? Like this, that makes no sense. I mean, now we could talk about what kind of water makes sense to wash a car with, but it was just one of those moments where I realized, like, we do a lot of dumb things here, And a year later, that was the moment I quit my job. A year later, the aha moment that happened was this was like 2011. And, in 2011, Tesla wasn't what Tesla is today. And it might have actually been already 2012, like around that time. And someone drove up to our event venue. I was actually in Vancouver. I did a lot of global events at the time. In Vancouver, I was at the time already like the main manager of the whole gig. So, I had a lot of responsibility, and it was fun from certain angles. But someone drove up to our venue with an electric car. It was definitely not a Beamer. And I was like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, yo. And he handed me his charger cable. He is totally the boss of this moment, right? Because I was like worried why he was there with a non-BMW. That's kind of the mindset you have to be in for those gigs. And he's like, yo, plug that in for me, would you? And hands me the electric cable to plug in his car. And I was like, taking the cable, plugged it into the outlet in the wall. And if this was a movie, there would have been a soundtrack like, like, ah. It was the moment. And I just knew in that moment, I have to quit my job. And I literally did. A week later, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. Like, why would I continue to spend my life or my life force energy supporting something I already know since years I'm not fully behind? Now, that was that moment. And I don't recommend everyone does it in this way because, I did. Yeah. It took a lot of courage, but I also didn't do basically anything in the next 6 months that you could call productive. I just, drifted and had great savings and hung out in Vancouver and learned a lot, and that was a very fruitful time for me. But it was also, again, talk about parents, it was probably the scariest time for my parents. But it was also, not that I asked them for permission, but it is interesting to see how many of us, and you listening might be connected to that, care about what our loved ones think about what we do. And it's not wrong to care about that. However, we got to emancipate over that, right? We got to make our own choices and be courageous. And so that aha moment then carried all the way through till today, where I just deeply know I'm going to do what I feel is the right thing to do based on my set of values and based on also my very limited human perspective on what's going on. Because, like, let's be real. We humans believe we get it all. We know it all. We understand. And like, I figured this one out. But then really 5 years later, we barely agree with ourselves anymore, So we have somewhat limited perspective. That's why, coaching and being reflected and, awakening consciousness and broadening our perspective is an important piece of the journey. But so long story short, at that time, 6 to 8 months after I quit the gig, I opened a studio space, very much an event venue, very much a community event venue. I operated that for 2.5 years as the founder owner. And I invited tons of different teachers to give classes and teach in there. Now, this was suddenly out of nowhere. I lived on Vancouver Island in North America. I left everything else I knew and just did that because my inner voice told me to do that. And that was just like when I was a 14-year-old and had the desire to go abroad. My inner voice told me to go abroad. And, long story short, I told this a few minutes ago, I went to Paraguay. But these weren't things I really knew anything about, including the studio venue. I just followed my inner impulse, and it paid off. It worked. It worked. There was lots of low moments in between, and people usually like to talk about the high moments, but it worked nonetheless. And there was so much growth and learning in that for me. And that was the time specifically where I didn't really feel like teaching a whole lot. I felt like committing to being a learner. I felt like beginner's mind. I wanted to soak up everything I could about, meditating every day, about doing different yoga, asana practices every day, to, everything, evening gigs, music gigs, cooking classes, painting classes, shamanic drumming class. We did all of that. And it was awesome. It wasn't the thing I stuck with for longer than 2.5 years because, life changes and something else arose. But those were like the moments where my aha really happened and my commitment really
It's a
happened.
beautiful story. I appreciate you sharing that. And it gives so much insight into the person that you are today and the man that you've become. And there's so much there that I relate to in my journey.
Thank you.
But knowing you for a little while now, a little over a year, and we've worked together, with coaching, and you are someone I look up to quite a bit, professionally and personally. And I see from that story a lot of courage and a lot of self-discovery. And I'm with you. Like, there are moments where you're welcome.
Thank you, brother.
There are moments where you're in those lows and you feel like you might be there forever. That's what's so interesting about human psychology, is when we're in a bad time, which right now we are, let's face it, collectively as a society, I would say, that's my opinion. It's very easy to forget about any good times. And then when you are in the good times, it's very easy to forget that you could go back into bad times. And that's just kind of how human nature goes. But the point there is, when you are in those lows, for me, what's been helpful is to remind myself that, just ahead, just around the corner, are good times.
Beautifully said. There's something interesting when you stated like the general state of the world. Like, I agree and I disagree with you at the same time, but I want to go along with what you said. And when we are in these, 5 minutes before midnight kind of moments, or like, like just like shit's going down, moments, we often lack the imagination to simply think of another way this could go down, or another alternative way how this could go down. And our imagination, our ability to dream up different pathways, is actually one of our total superpowers as humans. Now, I'm not saying you don't actually ultimately have to do it and live it, just like we have to find a way to unravel this geopolitical mess we're in, with leadership that might not be leading us to places of collective thriving, as just as much as we have to unravel the mess we're in with the pollution that we've co-created for the sake of certain groups of people gaining a lot of monetary wealth. We have to unravel it in one way or another. But let's imagine different ways to get there, rather than to stay in the mind and let's fix it, solve it, because really in that state of consciousness, we won't fix it or solve it at all. We need to find a way of being in a balance between innovation, imagination, creativity, and solid doing. But if it was done by only talking about problems or only talking about doomsday predictions, then it would be done already, because we've done a lot of that in the last years. And so I really agree with you that when we're in high times, it's sometimes really difficult to empathize with low times. And when we're in low times, it's sometimes really difficult to just imagine, wait a second, my mind's thought or idea of what's happening might not be the only truth here. Could I let go and move out of the crunch experience that my mind is going through over and over again? Just like, oh, I need more money. Like, where do I get more money from? It's like, sure, in the end of the day, you might have to do something about that too. But getting there with this needing, this must, is a very, I've been in that place. It's a very dire place to be in. It's very uncomfortable. And opening up to creativity and receptivity is one part of the equation to actually, sustainably move yourself.
What are your experiences when you live in that state of neediness? What are you receiving back from the universe? And in contrast to that, what are you experiencing when you're living in a state of gratitude, living in a state of abundance, even if it's not there yet, even if you haven't quite gotten or acquired the thing that you're looking for, but you can at least feel and live in that vibration, as if you do have it? What are your experiences with either of those?
That's another deep question. I kind of made the neediness example just there. So, it could be money, but it could also be a romantic partner. Like, the moment we need something a lot and we think about it obsessively over and over and over again, we often close the door to receiving, right? I've gone through that for sure, but I also have coached many people to get out of that, because it is sometimes just as easy as to let it rest. Do something else instead. Get your mind to somewhere else. Breathe. Come back to things you're grateful for, even though, sure, there's still something to solve, but just for 10 minutes, just for 1 hour, switch into another way that makes you closer to receptive, right? And yeah, the other side of abundance and the other side of gratitude is, it's not about, again, I'm not a fan of faking it till you're making it, like, at all. I don't think that's a really good mantra. But I do believe that, our focus is one of our strongest abilities to interface and connect with the universe at large and the way that creation happens. And so checking in with our focus, where it's actually hanging out, right? So if the focus is on the scarcity, if I need, I must, it's very difficult for other things to come into your experience. And the opposite is true as well. If you are consistently focused on how much you appreciate things, more things you appreciate are closer and more available to you. Now, this is kind of in the direction of the law of attraction teachings. And I know many people have a hard time really digesting that and really, really living it and working it. But many people also just straight up live that, because those are fundamental principles of how we create and connect to reality. And, reality isn't this machine-like thing that just is this certain way. We really got to understand that the bias of our personal perspective changes everything. Just like in science, certain things can be repeated only by people with the same intentions. Now, this is where science turns into, a process that's interesting. Just like we have science that proves things that are, sponsored by monetary interest, that is totally biased. And it's like, well, wait a second, is that really objective science? Is that really like unchangeable science? Because that group got this result that had a strong bias by this monetary fund, and then this group got other results. So like, again, so there's so much to explore for us about bias, intention, and focus. And you brought it to gratitude. I wanna land the plane there. Gratitude, I believe, is one of the most misunderstood things. So just having a journal where someone says, list 3 things you're grateful for today. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. It's still nice, but it doesn't really leverage the power of gratitude. And gratitude or satisfaction or appreciation are pretty easy to get to, actually, unless you're obsessively identifying with every thought your mind is thinking. And the point, what I mean with leveraging it, is to find simple things you're genuinely appreciating or grateful for, and allowing yourself, just like with the gym, like, you don't go once and then you're done. You don't do 1 rep and then you leave. You don't go to the gym or any form of physical training and like, the gratitude book that's on your night table. It's like, 3 things I'm grateful for. Well, 1 curl for my biceps, 2 curls for my biceps, 3 curls for my biceps. Done with the training. Why am I not a sexily ripped athlete yet? Now, that wouldn't make sense to anyone who's ever, worked on their body hard. It's like, you got to do a few different things, and you got to do some things a bit longer, and you got to do some things with more focus, right? And it's the same thing with gratitude. Like, if we make it a practice to spend 10, 12, 15 minutes a day in genuine contemplation of gratitude, that could be written or that could be meditating, then it takes on its own dynamic. It suddenly acts like a buffer or like a field around you, that doesn't let in anything that is like skeptical criticism, like, that actually connects easier with other people that are very grateful. And so the point I'm trying to make is focus and understanding how to play with focus rather than just seeing it as this magical thing, right? Think of the school systems. Everyone just assumes that we all should be focused, but no one teaches us how to really focus. It's like, hey, Dan, bring your focus back to the class. What are you doing writing notes under your table? It's like, well, fair enough, Mr. or Mrs. Teacher, but like, how do I focus? that's not a class in school, but it could be, and it's something that those who are high performers or achievers, they are extremely good at following their focus into places that work
Amen
for
to
them.
that. I love that. Where do you go from here, Julian? You have so much going on for you. You have your coaching, your podcast, you have your work around regeneration and breath work. Where do you see yourself going in all of this? And then here's a loaded question. I'm full of deep questions today. What would you say your purpose is in life?
Bam. Thanks for bringing it back to that question, to where am I going from here? My purpose in life, cheeky answer, is to be me. What I mean with that is, purpose is changing at different stages of our life, but I really believe that the authentic unfolding and expression of our unique gifts is our purpose, right? And to put some more tactile things to it, and that's kind of also where I'm going. For me, it has a lot to do with embodying these things I've been learning over the last 20 years, and embodying the journey of regeneration, and passing that on to a generation of children. I'm not a father yet, but at some point I'd like to be. And I'm definitely not a fan of the traditional schooling system. So at some point, in one way or other, I got to get involved with that. Again, those who know my vita, or know the steps I've taken. I've been part of different education initiatives in the past, and that at some point will catch up with me. But the short term, midterm, direction, again, there's very little planning in me. There's very little I have certain goals and objectives, but it has a lot to do with doing what I'm already doing, with increasing determination, with increasing follow through, creating the space to coach and support and care for more people, myself, and with a team of people I'm building. With the podcast, I'm at 300 and a few episodes at this point. I'm definitely going to go at least till 500. So there's still another 2-3 years of podcasting ahead of me, where I want to get this show from the million and more media impressions it had over the last few years to it doesn't even matter what the ultimate numbers are for me. It's more important to me that there's this idea of the tribe, the true 1,000 fans. And what I mean with that is people that are so connected to my guests, my message, and what I'm broadcasting about, that they also show up at the events I host, right? So for years, I've been hosting events, just like at that studio space I mentioned earlier. Earlier this year, 2022, I hosted a beautiful event at an agroforestry project in Brazil. All rescheduled to do that in 2023, as well as a regeneration and mastermind. So much more to come about that. And if you're intrigued and want to be part of something like this, just for now, follow Dan in this episode, and then follow me on one of your favorite platforms, and like Instagram or LinkedIn or my website, and come to those events, because that's really my next step of expansion, Dan. Is I actually love working with people. I love supporting people. I actually love spending time with people in real space, and the expansion of what I've already been doing can only be to do it, as I said, with more determination, with more follow through, and gather people to celebrate what we're co-creating on this planet, and to continuously inspire each other that this is actually real. Like, we, as you said, we're living in times that are highly complex, and some of the steps forward are much more connected to the natural world, to the soil, to the bioregion we live in, and to the way we support each other and care for each other. And so I want more of that in my life, and I want ultimately to live in a form like that with kids. Whenever that's coming, I have no plan. I don't need to. I don't schedule my life through. Actually,
I would say that's one thing I recognize in you, is that you have this fluidity to your life and to your work, and you have your North Star. And as long as you are going in that direction towards your North Star, it's okay if things pivot a little bit, or a new idea pops up, and you decide to not take action on it because you're focusing your energy more on something else. But you have this really beautiful fluidity to how you live and to how you work and to how you give back to this world. So I guess in parting words, I want to say thank you to
Thank
to
you.
you for all you have done for me in my life. That coaching segment that we had last year together was very transformational, to say the least. It opened up my heart and opened up my mind to things I never really thought of before. And I'm just really grateful that you're in my life.
Thank you, Dan. This means a lot to me. Turned into a short moment of bromance here for everyone tuning in. I'm super grateful for you too, Dan, and everyone listening. Subscribe to the guy, share these episodes that Dan is creating, and I really believe in what you're doing, and it's a mirror to what I'm doing as well. But there's a reason that so many people are choosing to connect with breathwork or choosing to connect with podcasting and broadcasting, because it has to do with us stepping into expression, stepping into who we truly are, rather than following the average Joe kind of orders that life kind of has for us. And you are totally able and entitled to step out of that. I mean, you listening and Dan, you're already doing it, man. Like, don't wait for the next accomplishment. Like I'm telling you, since we met, like you're like full on. You're living
Thank
it and
you so
doing
much.
it, and
Did I
more
mention at the beginning
accomplishments
that you're a
always follow.
cheerleader?
Yeah, you did. Full circle.
Appreciate you, brother. I'll have all your links, your social, your website, your podcast. Check it out. Green Planet, Blue Planet. I'll have that all linked up in the show notes. Check out Julian and everything that he's up to. Julian, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.